It was May 1855, a time when Britain stood as the most powerful empire in the world, its ships commanding the seas, its industries blazing with coal and steel, and its banks pulsing with gold. The railways were the pride of the Victorian age, symbols of progress, precision, and power. Iron tracks stitched together the cities and ports of England, like veins of modern civilization. Steam engines, with their rhythmic thunder and plumes of smoke, carried everything from livestock and letters to the most precious cargo of all, gold. No one imagined that this shining symbol of British efficiency could be breached. No one imagined that in an age of order and empire, a handful of clever criminals could outwit both the railway and the crown. But in May of 1855, they did exactly that. In one audacious act, they stole nearly £12,000 in gold bullion worth millions, today right out from under the watchful eye of the railway and the Bank of England itself. This was the Great Gold Robbery of 1855, a crime so daring, so meticulously planned, that it stunned the Victorian public and forced a reckoning with the limits of technology, trust, and greed. The story begins not in the shadows of the underworld, but in the respectable offices of the South Eastern Railway Company, whose lines connected London to the port of Folkestone, the gateway to Europe. Gold was regularly transported from London to Paris for commercial dealings between the Bank of England, the London to Paris bullion couriers, and various banks on the continent. The system was efficient and routine. Gold bars were packed into iron safes, sealed, and placed aboard the mail train departing from London Bridge Station. Upon arrival at Folkestone, the safes would be transferred onto the steam packet to Boulogne, then carried by train to Paris. It was a process trusted by governments and financiers alike, and therein lay the flaw. On May 15, 1855, 3 boxes containing gold bars valued at £12,000 were loaded into safes bound for Paris. When they arrived at their destination 2 days later, everything appeared normal until the boxes were opened. Inside, instead of gleaming gold bars, were lead-shot dents, heavy and crudely shaped to match the weight of the stolen bullion. Someone had replaced the gold during the journey. The discovery caused pandemonium. The Bank of England was furious. The South Eastern Railway was humiliated. The British press seized upon the scandal with delight, calling it the most extraordinary robbery of the century. But the question remained how? How could thieves remove gold bars from locked safes aboard a guarded mail train, swap them with lead, and escape unnoticed? The investigation fell to Scotland Yard, then still in its infancy as a modern detective force. At its helm was Inspector James Tanner, a methodical man of keen intelligence. Tanner knew from the outset that this was not the work of amateurs. The robbery required access, knowledge of railway schedules, duplicate keys to the safes, and the means to melt and disguise gold. This was no spur-of-the-moment crime. The first clue lay in the safes themselves. They were secured by complex locks manufactured by Chubb & Sons, the most trusted name in the business. Only 2 keys were known to exist, one kept in London, the other in Paris. Yet, someone had clearly opened the safes mid-journey without forcing them. That meant only one thing: a duplicate key. Attention turned to those who handled the gold en route: railway employees, couriers, and guards. Among them was William Tester, a clerk at the railway's London Bridge office. Tester was well respected, quiet, and seemingly devoted to his work. But investigators learned that he had recently been spending beyond his means. Fine clothes, nights at the theatre, whispers of a mistress. He became their first suspect. Through careful surveillance, Tanner discovered that Tester had close ties to another railway worker, Edward Agar, a talented and intelligent man who had once been imprisoned for fraud. Agar was known for his ability to forge documents and manipulate lock skills. That made him both useful and dangerous. And when detectives began digging further, a third name surfaced: James Burgess, a guard on the very train that carried the gold that night. The pieces began to fit together. Agar, Burgess, and Tester were all insiders, men who knew the system, its weaknesses, and its routines. Yet they were missing something: an outsider who could move in higher circles, arrange logistics, and launder stolen gold. That man was William Pierce. Pierce was a former railway clerk turned swindler, charming, articulate, and utterly without scruple. He had once been dismissed for misconduct, but he kept his connections within the railway world. It was Pierce who conceived the plan, a plan that exploited every assumption the system made about its own security. The scheme unfolded with surgical precision. Tester, working within the railway office, supplied Pierce and Agar with critical detail schedules, lock designs, and handling procedures. Agar, with his experience as a forger and tinkerer, painstakingly craft duplicate keys to them, chop locks using wax, impressions obtained from tester. It took weeks of work, but eventually, they had perfect copies. Meanwhile, Burgess, as the train's guard, would ensure that the safes were placed in a carriage under his supervision and that no one disturbed the thieves during the critical window. The execution came on May 15, 1855. That evening, Agar and Pierce boarded the London Bridge train under assumed names, carrying with them false boxes filled with lead shot. Burgess, in on the plan, made sure the safes containing gold were loaded into the compartment near them. During the journey between London and Folkestone, at some point after the last major stop, Agar used his duplicate keys to open the safes, working swiftly and silently. The men removed the gold bars and replaced them with the lead decoys. The entire exchange took place while the train thundered through the night, the rhythmic roar of wheels on rails masking the sound of their work. By the time the train reached Folkestone, the safes were locked again. The seals appeared unbroken, and the thieves had already disembarked earlier along the route, gold in hand. For several days, the theft went unnoticed. The gold reached Paris, was opened, and the lead revealed. But by then, the robbers were already melting the bullion into unrecognizable ingots. It was, in every respect, a perfect crime, except for one flaw: greed. The stolen gold, though melted and disguised, had to be converted into cash. Pierce, ever ambitious, began to spend conspicuously dinners, gambling, new clothes. Tester, though nervous, took his share. Burgess lived cautiously, but Agar, the craftsman of the operation, soon faced an unrelated crisis. He was arrested for forgery and sentenced to prison. But before being incarcerated, he entrusted his share of the stolen gold, valued at around £3,000, to Pierce, with instructions to keep it safe for him until release. Pierce agreed. When Agar later learned that Pierce had betrayed him, spending his money and boasting of the robbery to others' rage overcame discretion. He decided to do the unthinkable. He confessed. From his prison cell, Agar sent word to Scotland Yard. He would reveal everything in exchange for leniency. His statement was explosive. He described in vivid detail how the plan had been conceived, how the keys had been forged, and how the gold had been stolen and replaced with lead. He named everyone: Pierce, Tester, Burgess, all of them. Agar's testimony was the key that unlocked the entire mystery. Tanner and his detectives swiftly arrested Pierce and Tester. Burgess followed soon after. The trial that followed at the Old Bailey in January 1856 was one of the most sensational of the decade. The courtroom was packed with spectators, merchants, clerks, even members of Parliament, all eager to hear how such a crime could have been committed on their beloved railways. The Times newspaper devoted pages to the proceedings, describing the case as a triumph of criminal ingenuity. Agar, brought from prison to testify, became both witness and villain in the eyes of the public. Calmly, he explained every stage of the plan: the wax impressions, the false boxes, the midnight exchange. His precision astonished even the judge. The defense tried to discredit him as a convicted felon, arguing that his word could not be trusted. But the weight of evidence, the matching lead molds, the forged documents, and the key impressions left little doubt. On January 13, 1856, the verdicts were delivered. Pierce, Tester, and Burgess were all found guilty. Pierce and Tester were sentenced to transportation for life to Australia, while Burgess received a 14-year sentence. Agar, as promised, was granted leniency and eventually released after serving part of his term. The aftermath of the Great Gold Robbery reverberated far beyond the courtroom. The South Eastern Railway and the Bank of England overhauled their security systems. Safes were redesigned with more complex locks, and new protocols required multiple witnesses for every stage of bullion transport. Insurance firms rewrote their policies, and railways across Britain reviewed their procedures. The case also marked a turning point in the rise of professional policing. Scotland Yard's successful investigation, aided by scientific reasoning, surveillance, and insider testimony, signaled the dawn of modern detective work. Yet for all its procedural impact, what captured the public imagination was the sheer audacity of the crime. Victorian newspapers turned the robbers into dark folk heroes cunning, men who had outsmarted the machinery of empire. Penny novels, broadsides, and stage plays dramatized the event. The image of thieves swapping gold for lead aboard a speeding train became a lasting symbol of criminal daring. But there was no glamour in the end. Pierce, once suave and confident, died in exile in Australia, penniless and broken. Tester languished in prison, writing remorseful letters home. Burgess vanished into obscurity after his release. Agar, the man who had betrayed them all, disappeared into anonymity. His confession, though self-serving, ensured his survival but at the cost of his own soul. The Great Gold Robbery endures not just as a tale of theft, but as a mirror of its age. It reflected the paradox of Victorian progress that the same ingenuity which built the railways could also be used to exploit them. It revealed the moral greyness beneath the polished veneer of respectability, and it showed that even in an era obsessed with order, the human appetite for risk, for wealth, for power could derail the whole system. One could almost imagine the sound of that train, rushing through the night, the rhythmic clatter of steel wheels, the hiss of steam, the darkness closing in around a carriage where, unseen, the boundaries between trust and treachery were being rewritten. And when morning came, the empire awoke to find that its perfect machinery had been outwitted not by revolutionaries or foreign spies, but by its own sons, men who understood the system so well that they could slip between its gears and take the gold right out of its heart. More than a century and a half later, the Great Gold Robbery still gleams in the annals of true crime, a story of brilliance and betrayal, of greed wrapped in respectability, and of a world just beginning to learn that progress always carries a price. Thank you for watching Crimes Through Time. If this story fascinated you, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more journeys into history's darkest mysteries. And tell us in the comments, do you think Adelaide Bartlett was truly innocent, or did she get away with the perfect crime? We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay safe.